Why do you keep going back to the person that you say you're no longer going to go back to? Well, the answer is a lot more simple than we might think. The reason you keep going back is the same reason why any other addict goes back to whatever substance they have chosen as their drug of choice. Therefore, the relationship or the individual that you're dealing with is nothing more than a narcotic. You are using them as your drug of choice. Now, this is how it works with humans. This is where it gets a little complex, but still, you're going to carry right along with this train of thought. So, let's say you were raised in a household where you were always made to feel guilty, right? So you become addicted to the emotion of guilt. So guilt becomes your natural way of feeling and thinking and operating through life. So you become addicted to that, right? So now you are a grown-up and you get into a relationship and you are seeking out that feeling of guilt. And so you will look for an individual who is going to represent or who is going to give you that dosing of guilt. So you might find somebody who is always blaming, right? That's the person you bring into your life experience. That's the individual that you entertain. That's the person that you keep for a long-term relationship. The person who brings about those feelings of guilt. So you say to yourself, they make me feel so guilty, not understanding that you have actually picked them, selected them at a subconscious level in order to continue to experience those feelings of guilt. Did you catch that? I hope you caught what I threw right now. You are using that person as a reinforcement of the emotions that you have learned to become addicted to, or you have been trained, conditioned, programmed into desiring or into perceiving as the norm, into perceiving as the substance that will give you what you need. That's the reason why you keep going back to them, because you're addicted to them. And when I say you're addicted to them, some people think of addiction as this thing that you cannot break. As a former addict of literal substances, of little chemical substances, I can tell you right now that it is a decision away, right? The moment I made a decision that I was more interested in the future version of me than the past version of me, that addiction dissipated from my life. The moment I made a decision, a conscious and personal decision, that I no longer saw a service in this thing, right? That there was more pain than pleasure in the substance or in this addiction. The moment I made that choice for myself, everything changed. Immediately, I went cold turkey, literally. After 6 years, all of a sudden, I was done. And so you find yourself in the same place. I don't care if it's been 5 years. I don't care if it's 5 months. I don't care if it's been 55 years that you've had this addiction to this individual or what they represent. Again, it's not necessarily them, it's what they represent. Because if they stopped representing that thing, if they changed overnight, in the blink of an eye, became somebody else, right? They became this absolute lover, unconditional lover, and you were still somebody who needed to feel guilt, you would find a way to sabotage that relationship, I promise you. And so that's why we find the ones who we can sign this unwritten contract, right? This non-verbal agreement where we say, as long as you stay this way, I can stay that way. It's like a people pleaser, right? And let's say a narcissist. Why do you find that the people pleaser is always attracting the one who just takes? Well, it's simple math, supply and demand, right? If an individual is saying, I give you everything in order to feel worthy, the other says, I will take everything in order for me to feel worthy. So I must always be receiving in order to feel worthy. The other saying I must always be giving in order to feel worthy. And then they meet, they commingle, and they are just a tragically toxic, perfect couple, right? And so we think to ourselves from a victim narrative, right? We think to ourselves from a conscious level, a program level, that surely there is no way that me, a sane, rational adult, should be going back to this person or this type of relationship. That's another thing, by the way. It's not just the person, it's the type of relationship. That's called a pattern. So if you find yourself getting back into the same type of relationship time and time again, it's time to put the brakes on things. Like, look, I have seen this scenario play out enough times to where I know it's a universal truth. If you do not, as my brother Earl says, if you do not learn the lesson the first time, the lesson is going to return. It's the same way as school. At least school used to be this way. I think they're just passing everybody now. They're just trying to get them out of there. But back in the day, if you failed a test, you would have to take that test again. If you failed a class, you have to take that class again. If you failed a grade, you had to repeat that grade until you passed, right? It's the exact same way in life. When you continue to do the same thing, you will continue to get the same exact result. Thank you, Einstein. This is the definition of insanity. We are walking around life insane, believing that we can just continue to go along and get along, continue to get into the very same type of relationships, and all of a sudden, Prince Charming, all of a sudden, Princess Fiona, that's the first princess that popped up in my mind for some reason. All of a sudden, we're going to have this fairy tale type of story that's going to play out, even though we've invested ourselves in a toxic story, right? So why do I continue to return? Why do I keep falling for the same person? Why do I keep falling for your type, as the song says? The reason is because that is your type, right? You might not want to admit it, but that is your type. And I appreciate the individuals who say, like, I like the bad boys, the bad girls, whatever, because they are cognizant at the very least that, hey, that's just their type, right? They're addicted to the toxic. Like, they are infatuated by the toxic. They are honest. And by the way, this ain't no red pill, this, that, and the third. This ain't no manosphere, this, that, and the third. This is just straight facts. This is just me from real life, right? Seeing this. And it ain't about all women want a bad boy, you got to act. No. This is about wounded individuals who have emotional wounds, and those emotional wounds manifest in the relationship dynamics that play out in their lives. That's what this is about. Therefore, you really have to start asking yourself this question honestly. Why do I continue to fall for the same type of person? This is a pattern. This is a habit. So, if I can ask myself that and not take the victim seat, right? I'm not going to step back and say, well, because it's their fault and I keep getting these type of people because people are... No. Common denominator, as Carrie Nicole says, common denominator. I am the one who keeps getting into the same dynamic. I am the one who keeps repeating these lessons. Why do I always bring this type of person into my life? Is because I, self, am choosing the same type of person. Now, why am I doing that? There is the answer of the hour. There's the answer of the year, of a lifetime. Why am I doing this? Well, it's because, I don't know, on the surface, you might think to yourself, well, I think I just don't have a good way of sensing how people are. No, that's not the truth. Because you're able to sense out homegirl at the job, right? You said, ooh, I knew she was no good. In 30 minutes, you knew that person. Something's off with them. 5 minutes, you knew that person at the coffee shop. Ooh, they are off. But yet with this individual, you seem to not have been able to discern. And the reason I say this is, not to say that some people don't pretend or they don't put on masks. I believe most people are putting on a mask, including yourself probably. But that person was resonant with you because they had something that you actually wanted. Subconsciously, unconsciously, automatically, they had something you wanted. They represented something that you were used to, a narrative that you were used to in relationships. And maybe it's only the dynamic that you have in relationships. Maybe in every other area of your life, you are bossed up. But in this one area, you continue to have the same negative results. Now, if you were in school, if you were getting your degree, or you were at a job, or you had a business, or whatever it may be, if you continue to get a negative result from doing something, would you not investigate and say, there has to be something I'm doing that is off, right? Like, I think that would be just a general, straightforward type of thought process for anybody. You ain't got to be that deep to think like that, right? I would say, there's probably something I'm doing that's off. Unless you're completely in a victimhood mindset, you might just say it's everybody's fault, it's the government's fault, the institution's fault, the man's fault, the woman's fault, everybody's fault, right? It's the fault of the universe's fault, God's fault, the devil's fault, everybody's fault. But if you're somebody who can be honest enough with yourself, you'll actually start getting to the bottom of these things. And what I've realized, again, is when you hold a belief that you're not worthy of unconditional love. So that can manifest in 1,000 different ways. Maybe I'm not worthy to be loved for who I am, so I have to show up in a certain way, or I have to do things, or I have to be a certain person. Whatever it may be, whatever the manifestation may be for you, it still all has the same root. I am not worthy of unconditional love as I am. And so you start to become a performer. That's why you continue to return back to these relationships that you know. Because at least in that dynamic, as you all need to watch Carrie Nicole's content, I'm telling y'all. I mean, y'all be watching it regardless, but she really breaks this down. It's like you find yourself at a place where you are in situations you know you can control. You're comfortable in that level of control, right? I know I can control through people pleasing. By the way, people pleasing is control. Shout out to my first published book, Doing Me Guilt Free. You gonna know, if you gonna know one thing, it is that a people pleaser is not a victim, right? You know what you're doing, and you're doing it to get yourself a result. You are looking for control in that relationship by doing these things. Manipulation and witchcraft, as we call it back home in Zimbabwe. That is witchcraft. So we really have to start getting honest with ourselves if we really want to start getting different results in our lives. That's what this is really about. That's what this is about, right? Now, I'm going to wrap up right now because I'm getting hungry for real. So, shameless plug, Doing Me Guilt Free. This is my first published book. Make sure to get yourself a copy by clicking the link in the description below, period. Till the next time, peace.